I didn't hit record.
I've played this game.
God damn it!
It's okay.
I'm so glad I noticed.
get to hear my credits again. This is exciting.
God damn it! You were supposed to... God damn it! This is like the 100th time I've done this. There was once, though, I didn't notice until I was an hour in to the podcast.
Our episode with Jonah Ray. We
Really?
recorded the first 40 minutes, and then we have to stop, and then it just never got hit again. And so we did another hour that nobody ever heard.
You didn't go back?
20 minutes, and then...
You didn't go back?
No.
Because you're like,
He's
it's
never been
over.
on the show again.
Kyle, don't leave me. I'm so sorry. We're going back because I forgot to hit record. Here we go. Oh, hi. You're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky few that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I used to work at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So let's eat. I'd like to welcome our guest, comic writer, producer, podcaster, filmmaker, comic book author, and record label owner, therefore must be tired person, Kyle Clark. Kyle hails from the great city of Los Angeles and co-hosts two podcasts you have for sure heard of called This Is Rad and Everything Is Scary, as well as produces a massive podcast you for sure know, The Jackie and Laurie Show, starring Jackie Cation and Laurie Kilmartin. Kyle has several comedy albums out and is a wildly successful small business owner because he runs a comedy album record label, y'all. I better know Kyle from being a guest on his lovely podcast, This Is Rad, a few times where I scream about things I love or I pee off of boats. So that said, Kyle, since this is the very first time you have heard this intro and you didn't just hear it when I wasn't recording, how did you get into comedy? Why start a record label? How was growing up in Simi? And can our audience come to your famous 4th of July parties? Tell us.
And as I said before, the answer to all of them is yes.
Okay, great.
I was trying to figure out how I could recreate all of it. I'm like, I don't remember words I said a minute ago. But I got to hear those credit line again twice. I said it's good. Like, I got to hear my obituary. I'm like, all right, we're doing okay.
We're doing great.
Expect your death, less scary.
You'll leave a legacy, Kyle.
I did. I started stand-up by taking... I was in a class in college, and the final for the class was you did 5 minutes of stand-up at the Ice House.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's
And
insane.
I was fulfilling... I was literally at that point I needed to finish credits for my film minor, and I was running out of writing classes you could take in the film program.
That's hilarious.
And so I took this class, had no interest in stand-up, but did well, kept getting invited back to perform more and more, did not understand what that meant at the time. Never thought for a second about being a stand-up comedian.
Really?
I wanted to be a musician.
Really?
I was a rocker with the soul for rockin'. And literally, this is the level of bad at larger vision I have for things, is I'm getting interviewed by newspapers about my stand-up, and instead I am plugging my shitty band. Like it's such a like weird thing looking back, but it's also it's telling of most of me before. I'll go with 31.
Sure.
Where a perfectly good situation is happening, and I'm like, but what about this thing over here that does not want me at all? I know I'm being given lots and lots of encouragement here, and I complain and wish that I had encouragement, but I want it from this thing that is emotionally withholding.
Jesus, Kyle, that's the
We're
most
the same
relatable
person,
shit.
Kate.
Oh my god.
And
Oh, I'm
so and then I started then music flamed out pretty hard.
Wait, at what age though? Like, where are you
22.
Oh, so you were
stopped.
Okay, so you were done with it.
For a while, yeah. I've subsequently gotten back in and done stuff again, but I needed to be done. I was in a band that ended badly after like 5 or 6 years of being very tumultuous, and then did a folk record because I was like, maybe I'll do the punk rock retirement plan where I get into folk music. And did okay. It wasn't fun the way that being in a band was.
Yeah.
Like just standing there by yourself with the acoustic guitar. I was like, this feels like some bullshit. And also like I'm really hitting the upper limits of my harmonica playing. I had one of those holders. It was fun. But so then I had bought the one of the nicest camcorders you could get, this with all the money I had gotten from like graduating and working for a chunk, And it literally was the same like a month before the Canon 5D came out, and filmmaking changed entirely forever.
Yeah, it sure did.
So I was always kind of behind the eight ball. And man, I sure spent $800 on a camera, and it was the most money I'd spent on a thing. And those things were $5,000 when they came out. And I'm watching people and I'm like, oh, not only does my thing look low rent, I financially cannot possibly attempt to compete. But I shot a bunch of stuff on it, and it was fun. I learned a lot. But ultimately, it was one of those things where I'm like, this is not going to work. And I'd had a couple like setbacks and disappointments and just kind of hit a wall. And I remember like, and then was also like in love with somebody, and that didn't work out. So like I had projects fall apart and was sad about this. I'd say broken heart, but whatever. But like,
I mean, that's honest.
Sure. But then
But
like, I remember like driving home from this like terrible night. It's like 5 a.m. and it's 3 a.m. and I have to be up at 5:30 to go work the next day.
No, ma'am.
And all I can keep thinking to myself is this will eventually be a funny story. And by the time I got to my house, because I was already a writer, like writing was the real, like music is the thing that I always liked to do because it was fun and there might be girls. And when you write a short story by yourself in your room, very few girls.
Not none, just very few.
Yes. The English department's still great. But so writing was the real love. So I still had that through all these things. And it was sort of just trying to find a venue for writing has been what I chased for such a long time. Because like, I don't know why, but like I never fit like the academic letters world. Like I don't really know why, but like it's probably because I'm an asshole. But like or a goofy man, I mean. But like, and that seems like such a serious world. And I'm just like, you guys want to talk about Kurt Vonnegut and make fart sounds? It's a guy with multiple English degrees.
Smart dude. Wrote a couple books.
Yeah. And so started to think like, well, maybe, stand up, I'm pretty sure that's free to start.
Turns out.
So why don't I do that? It's the same reason I never got into improv or sketch writing is because like I don't have $400 every 6 weeks.
That's insane.
But you know what I have is enough for a Diet Coke at an open mic. And I didn't know there were comedy open mics. So I spent the first maybe 3 years of doing stand-up almost exclusively at music and poetry open mics.
Kyle. So the audience didn't know that they were even going to be laughing?
I was the comedy guy at a lot of mics. I was like the weird, fun, oddball guy who like told jokes. So this is the craziest thing. And this all ties into my working world because this is all part of the end of the teaching years as stand-up's going. But like there was this mic where it was musicians could do 3 songs. And so when I first went up and was like, can I do comedy? He was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's see what happens. And he's like, well, they do 3 songs. So you want to do like, I don't know, is 12 minutes enough?
Holy God.
And
Holy God. That is for
like,
an eternity on
like
stage.
18 months when I was 2 years into stand-up.
Kyle.
I got to do 12 minutes in front of a real audience every Tuesday.
You
right now
got
I would
good.
kill most of my family
to be able to do that. Yeah.
And so I got to fail a lot really fast. And then that, here, I'll start with the ending and then we'll go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
But like is that I start doing all that stuff. I am in grad school for teaching at that time. And so I am student teaching in South Central LA and then going to USC in the afternoon for classes about all my teaching stuff. And then on the way home to see me from UCLA, I am stopping in Santa Monica and LA and the Valley and see me to do open mic spots so that I can get that done and then go home and then go to bed and then wake up at 5 and do the next thing. I did all my homework on Sundays and Saturdays I got to sleep, but then at 5 o'clock I suited up and went out to Hollywood because by that time I'm doing LA comedy mics and I found a run I could do from 7 to 4 in the morning on Saturday night where I could do 3 or 4 mics. And so it was just like that was I would spend all week doing those mics to get something together and then go try it. Yeah, it was madness. Like
and you're not a coffee guy.
Not really. Well, energy drinks though. I'm less coffee now, but like I would poison my body with energy drinks for days.
I mean, you have to. That's not sustainable.
No, but it's for a couple of years you could make that run, and then
your brain starts bleeding, and you're like, well, this doesn't work anymore.
So then we'll all the way back.
Okay.
So grad school, I do that stand-up set.
Okay.
Or this is college, end of college. I do that stand-up set. I keep getting pulled back again. Clock how many times I can't take a hint. I get invited to do. For all the success I have with the stand-up, I then am offered a spot in my college's graduate film writing program.
Holy
just
shit.
Based on my stand-up.
You were
Again,
invited?
I've been doing this for
5
less
minutes.
than a year. Yeah, 5 seconds. I am a newborn comic. I'm not even a baby comic.
No.
And and I was a good writer. So that was the film program was a real kind of revelation because like I'd come from the English department where everybody's fucking great.
Sure.
And then I go to the film department where no one has ever read a book. And so I shadow wrote like 20
Rude.
fucking thesis projects.
Holy shit.
And so just kind of, started doing that stuff. And the problem was like I wanted to do filmy stuff, but I'm a pretentious dick. So I was like, where are we doing black and white and doing these things? And everybody there's like, I dress like Indiana Jones on the weekend. I was like, you're disappointing. Not because there's bad with that, but like I was really banking on pretentious film school. I can go to Indiana Jones guy on my civilian time. But so I joined this program, and again, it's really fun. I've never been before. Like, I didn't know you could major in creative writing. Like, I thought you had to go for something responsible in college.
Yeah.
And like, I had a grandfather die, so I got to, and he left money, and the money was just for education. And
Wow.
there's me, my brother, and my 2 cousins, and I am the only person who ever used it. The rest of them were like, we're not interested a ton in school. My brother eventually did on some stuff. The other 2 were like, no, thank you. So
Wow.
I got the good fortune and the privilege of being able to go get educated with financial backing. So it was this thing of like, I majored in creative writing, I minored in film, but I also took everything I could. I was like full plate every semester because it's like, wait a minute, there's a place where I can just like learn bullshit, live in a building full of people who want to hang out, and there are girls and weed. What is this magic land you speak of?
And how do I stay
it's in
forever?
Long Beach,
Yeah.
so everything around me rules.
Amazing.
And so like, was doing all that stuff in this grad program, and then and I'd almost gone to grad school separately. Somebody had pitched me to go in for counseling to become a therapist. So I was prepping that because I was like, okay, I can be a therapist and keep trying to get books written or something. And then this all stand up and all the movie stuff shows up like, this is a world that exists. And I was like, wait a minute, what?
What?
And so it was kind of a wild little run there. It was a lot of getting my shit figured out. I also was like a bit too heavy of a partier at the time. So again, I'm just not, I'm a mess, but I'm a mess that's trying to figure out a direction to go in to do good work.
So you were in film school.
Yeah.
100%. That confirms it.
So went through all that. Well, then 2 weeks before I graduate, there's some scandal in the film department and the program is dissolved.
What?
Yeah. So 2 weeks before I walk,
Kyle!
they tell me, hey, the program doesn't exist anymore. Sorry about your troubles on that. Good luck. It's the height of the recession because it's 2009. Have fun finding a job this summer.
Kyle, wait.
Yeah.
Wait. How can they do that after you've paid? Couldn't they have just waited till you guys walked?
Yes. I think they let. So I got my undergrad, just program I was taking, because I was taking this grad school class the writing class as an undergrad. So I was a grad student and an undergrad at the same time.
That's insane.
So I was still walking as an undergrad, and then it was just basically I had taken two classes, or I think like 2 semesters worth of grad class writing classes. So it was like. I was out some money on it because everybody else was getting. I hadn't qualified for the scholarship you were supposed to get with it.
Were you going to then get like some certificate in it then? So you would have gotten your.
Would have been a full master's in
Fuck
cinematic
off!
writing, and then the program didn't exist. Whatever, like.
So you would have had a dual. You would have had the undergrad and master's degrees in
Yes.
the same.
No, I would have had it in creative writing for English and then screenwriting for film. So I would have had 2 different discipline ones because I'd studied fiction primarily.
How are you not still mad? I'm angrier right now than you are presenting.
Because the ride post that is so wild that I kind of look at it and go like, okay, so what? I'd be like an aspiring filmmaker, or screenwriter trying to go get a pitch meeting and then like doing bad open mics in Long Beach. Like,
Yeah.
it's, plus like I am 2 years away from the entire planet of entertainment changing.
Oh,
and
sure.
so, because if you think about it, like the jump, if you look back at like the media landscape of 2009 versus 2011, it is insane. Like I just finished Chuck Klosterman's The 90s, which I cannot recommend enough.
I heard it's so good. I've not seen it.
I love him anyway.
Yeah.
This is his best book by a fucking quantum level. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
I'm
didn't know
thinking-
if I could swear
No,
or not.
Fuck you. I thought it was. What am I thinking of? There's a series that I thought that
That was the show, I think, or something like that.
Is it
That's
from
not-
his book?
No, this is a full separate book he's done. It is basically looking at the 90s and how 1990 to 2000 what America's identity is there, and like the parallels to now, or the things that create the things that are now a thing.
Wow.
Or like the ways that we fail to understand the national consciousness of the time, because it's hard to like look at history and understand where people are thinking then, because we know what we know now.
Wow.
So it's, it kind of covers the gamut of all the main stuff, and what's interesting to me was just like going like, oh, okay, like our generation loves to go like, this is unprecedented.
Don't
Can
we?
you believe this? And then you look back at 20 years ago and go like,
fuck,
hey,
this
they were
happened.
having a bad time then. We didn't invent rioting, as it turns out.
Wait, we weren't the first people to be mad about war? Oh,
Yeah,
fuck.
we had
Okay.
some conversation about some of these issues then.
Just a couple.
And it's so that was a really trippy thing, but it's put me also in the mindset, and I'm a real nerd about this kind of stuff, but is the like, how everything affects everything else. Like
Sure.
I love history, but I don't love it in like, the battles or they had cool clothes. It's literally like, I find this reassuring, because my questions about the human race are like, okay, we've been
They were
doing
asking
this.
them then. We're asking them now.
And it's a relatability too.
Yeah.
But so I look back at it, and I think I was bummed. I used to have an early stand-up bit about it, is that then I went to go start applying for jobs, and when I graduated high school, they're like, if you don't go to college, you're fucked.
Yep.
And then I started applying for jobs, and they said I was too qualified because they didn't want someone with a college education. I got
'Cause they'd have to pay
rejected
you.
from Sunglasses Hut.
No, you did
for
not.
being overly qualified. So I kept getting rejected. I spent summer of 2009 broke and just sweaty, walking around town looking for jobs, applying to places, putting my stuff to temp things, and it's recession time, deep recession. So there's just nothing. People are getting cut, shit's getting shut down, while I'm starting to go like, don't you want to pay me minimum wage?
Preview of coming attractions, folks.
And,
Not to be fatalistic, but
Whatever, man. You fucking do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And so eventually I got 2 callbacks, and I took both. Ultimately, I got one call, and then later that day got the other call, and
4.
and so needed these 2 jobs. The 2 jobs were, one was a teaching assistant, after school person for a private school, which seemed wild, and the other one was Bevmo.
Okay, now wait. Now I'm going to pause you
All right.
because now, Kyle, this is where
I realized I answered your second question.
That's okay.
And moved on.
No. That's great, actually, because that was the intro. So
Perfection.
put a pin in those 2 jobs, because I made a note. We're coming back to them. We're going to go. Okay. So I want you to get us to right now, today. Like, you have a record label.
Okay. Yeah.
You're still doing comedy, like, because we're going to talk about all the ancillary jobs that got you to where you are
Okay,
today. But get me to today.
So currently today, I am technically unemployed. That said,
Relatable.
I am the producer and host of my podcast, This Is Rad. That show has Patreon, so I do have some little bit of incomes coming in from that these days. I've been doing that for 7 years. That's kind of my flagship thing. I have a side show I started a few years ago called Everything Is Scary, because blank is blank exclamation point unintentionally has turned into part of my podcasting brand.
I love it.
I actually, far too esoteric for this. Everything is Scary is I'm a big horror fan, and my dear friend Jen Saunderson, who is a brilliant comedian, she and I became buddies a few years ago. Like, I'd known her forever, but then when you just all of a sudden you're like, this person I've known forever is now my bestie. And we talk about horror movies a ton. We're both movie insane people. We both love horror movie stuff, and so at a certain point I was like, we should just turn this into a show. We're doing this anyways, because I'm a broken person who's like, we could make content out of this.
Relatable.
And eventually, Jen got pregnant during COVID.
She did, bless her.
And what's great is I was the 5th or 6th person to find out she was pregnant, because we had business stuff we had to do.
And she's like, yo, I got to tell you this thing.
And then early on in pregnancies, you don't tell anybody for a hot minute, because you got to see what happens.
Yeah.
So I'm covering for a pregnancy on the show for all these things, and you can't say they're sick because COVID's happening.
Shit.
That was a fucking adventure. But
I'll
so
bet.
that's my horror podcast, and then I am the producer for the Jackie and Laurie show, which is Jackie Cation and Laurie Kilmartin, 2 of, I would argue, the greatest comedians of all time, sitting having conversations where the reason podcasting is crazy is you can break rules. Like, you can let 2 women who are over 45 have a conversation for more than 5 minutes and let people listen to it.
That's crazy.
It's one of the prides in my life is working on that show. I love both of them to death, but also, like, I truly think that, like, what they are doing on that show is a legacy. Like it's the amount of information they have on that show for comedians is, I think, maybe the best resource I've ever heard.
That's awesome.
It's, about just the nitty gritty of it. It's a show that does not explain shit. You either have to know deep cut comedy terms and locations of things, or you are just lost.
Wow.
But that's a lot of fun. That's been keeping me alive. That's that's keeping the cell phone paid.
Hello.
But so I do all those things, and then I also have a record label called Radland Records. I started it a few years ago. I have been self-releasing my records. Because I did music, I have a sound engineering background to a certain extent, and it kind of has lucked me. And I make the joke: if you're listening to this, if you want a skill that will keep you a job, know how to plug microphones in and run a mixer.
So real.
I've never been fully broke because I know how to plug microphones in, and somebody somewhere needs you to do that and has more money than you.
And that's that.
And so I fell into Meltdown back in the day. I was a sound tech there. Again, it was one of those things where it's like right place, right time, right microphones. And so I have recorded all my records and self-released them. I come from punk rock, so like stuff like Fugazi's a big influence and stuff like that. A few years ago, I had two friends, Solange Castro and Tom Goss, two great humans and very funny comedians, and they were both thinking about records, and I have done a couple and was working on another at that time, and said, I'll help you through this. Like, I'll produce or whatever, and help you get it made. So I started with Solange's, and then Tom's right around that same time, and we ended up doing a couple more before Tom's came out. But so I think we did Keith Carey and Jenny Hamilton in between. But starting with those two, like Solange was like, "Oh, cool! I'm helping a friend make a record. This is fun." And then I had this dinner with Tom. We were talking about it, and I said, "Like, dude, you should do a record because people might actually like pay you to do it and make like you might actually be able to like get on a label when people give a shit and stuff like that." And he sort of like sat, and again, God bless Tom Goss, like literally was like, "Yeah, I'd rather do it with you." And I was like, well, fuck, now I have to start a record label because I got two artists and me.
Yeah.
And then it evolved into, and again, it started as there's people I know who are really talented. Let me try to get stuff going. And there's some people where it's like, Keith Carey's one of the funniest human beings in the world and one of my best friends. So like, of course, like I'll put his things out until if he gets a better deal or I'm a skeleton.
Okay.
And then a lot of the rest of them have become like, and the whole philosophy behind Radland Records is comedy is the exact opposite of indie rock. In indie rock, your band is cool until it gets corporate sign off. And then you're kind of no longer as hip because everybody kind of knows the stuff and, it's not as fun. In comedy, no one wants to know your name unless you have a corporation signing off on you, it seems like.
Acting, same thing.
And it's wild stuff. And so I have gained an appreciation for a lot of comedians who have been able to DIY stuff, kind of across the board, from Brandy Posey to Doug Stanhope, kind of anybody who's doing it a little different is neat to me. And once I learned, like, it's not hard to make a comedy record and it's not expensive for me to make a comedy record, it became this thing like, well, I constantly complain that the industry ignores good talent and at any given point in time likes 4 comedians and just gives them every single opportunity instead of spreading it out to the thousands and thousands of funny people out there. And it was like, well, I'm in an okay place in my life. I have an okay job at that juncture. A few years ago, I got laid off during 2020. But
who didn't?
I was like, okay, I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I will start a label, and I will do this. It won't be grand. I'm not doing Entertainment 720. It's not going to be this grand thing with hats and all this stuff. But it's like, okay, if you are an artist and you want to do a record and nobody's fucking with you, and I think you're funny, let's go do this. Because I think artist empowerment is really important, and I think a lot of artists don't fit what entertainment sees as what a person can be. And so it's nice to be able to like show people, not and not show, but like, because I love coming from education stuff like that. I love helping people achieve things that they don't know if they can do or not.
That's
my
lovely.
favorite part of every record I've ever produced is the 2 a.m. phone call I get from them a week out, freaked out, like, is this a fucking bad idea? Like, what am I doing? Like, who am I? And I love it because I had that 3 or 4 nights before my first album recording, and I was on Risk, and I was running one of the bits that's a story on that show. A friend of mine let me drop in for it. And also on the show is Greg Proops. And Greg Proops is a beautiful, wonderful human being, and he's very smart, and he's been a big influence on me because it's the idea of like doing smart, elevated, but still like funny stand-up has always been kind of attractive to me. And I had said to him, like, man, I'm recording in 2 days and I got cold feet. And he looked at me and he's like, hey, do you remember blank? Because it was a mutual friend of both of ours. And he was like, they just did their first album at like 44. And I was like, yeah, I know. I was there. It's crazy. They did a great job. He's like, they did a great job. He's like, I have a question for you. Do you want to do your first album at 44? Or by the time you're 44, do you want to be really fucking good at making comedy albums?
Wow.
And that has been maybe the most seminal piece of advice I've received from somebody in this business. And again, he got a shitload of comedy albums. So it was a real like, hey, I'll do what you do. And so I started picking people up. I started doing stuff. I love people, again, who are oddballs, and so that's been a fun, weird thing and a little adventure there. And it's me trying to learn how to run a business.
Sure.
And so, yeah. And then I think that's all. Oh, and I do stand up and I write a comic book and yeah.
We're doing all those things. So in the show notes, we'll have all of that stuff. Okay, well, folks, we hope you enjoyed your apps. We're going to move on to the entrees after a quick break. We're back, and now it is time for the entrees. Okay, Kyle, this is the section where I ask a bunch of questions. I call it the speed round of questions. It's not a speed round. Tell stories. Do your thing. But they're all kind of the same standard questions that the audience has gotten used to hearing. This is where we talk about the negative stuff, but it's always better.
Oh, I love it.
We all do. Okay, what was your first job ever where the government was taking taxes out of your... Because some people say like paper route, babysitting, whatever. That can be true, but...
My first job ever was in college.
Okay.
I was a research assistant for the Human Development Program.
Boring as fuck?
Kind of fun.
Really?
But I'm a dork. Like, I love this stuff. And so, like, human development, again, despite being a writer the whole time, for me, what was so fun about college is I'm like, oh, I've always wanted to know about blank. So let me take a thing and be on the hook for a grade for it. So, like, I took, like, human development and psychology and all these things. But so for the human development, like, studying lifespan and all these kinds of things and the different observation you can make over was an interesting, but also the job was 90% making photocopies while I listened to the Dead Kennedys.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just holed up in my little space with my first iPod, just like, yeah, California Uber Alice. I understand how all of this stuff works.
What's the most interesting thing you learned doing that job?
How to work a photocopier.
That's it? That's boring. That's not what I thought you were going to say, Kyle. Come on. All right. How many customer service jobs have you had total?
Here we go. So 2, I want to say.
That's it?
Bevmo.
Okay.
And then this is where the larger conversation goes, is education.
I 100%, that's 100%.
99% of my jobs before entertainment are education.
Okay. Now, this is where, okay, pause. So you had said in the summer after, summer, okay, so you were a TA after school. Well, you got the phone call.
I have those 2 jobs,
okay.
Bevmo and the school.
You have 2 offers. Do you take both jobs?
I take both jobs.
Okay, because you're like, fuck it, I need the money.
Yeah.
So do you tell Bevmo I can only work nights? Or,
yes,
well, the TA was for after school?
Well, I said nights and weekends. You can have me after 7 on weeknights, and you can have me how much the weekend. So they did. I did a run, again, not unlike the other ones. I think it was 7 months where I did not have a day off between both jobs.
That's too much, Kyle.
It was wild. This is the weird thing. Like, once I started working, I just started working all the time.
Yeah, that's relatable.
It's one day I'll not be behind the 8 ball. But so I take these 2 gigs, and Bevmo is a fascinating place because it's just an upscale liquor store. It's in Simi Valley, so you're basically just dealing with wine alcoholic ladies.
It's also a chain for people not in Southern California. It's there's Bevmos everywhere, and so you do go strictly for basically just like liquor and
short for beverages and more. And
That's
it's
right.
just all different kinds of liquor of various levels. And the funniest thing was they had just finished their run of classes learning how to do stuff. So I had to kind of make some, because I am not a big drinker. And so I eventually got some pretty good understandings. The funniest one though for me is the wine, because even after I learned stuff, there's 6 words people want to hear. And you just cycle them at them until you see which one they react to. And then you lead them to the thing you've defaulted there. So give me
the example.
Sweet, buttery, earthy notes, dry, and there was something else, but it was those, because if they wanted wine but clearly didn't like wine, you'd send them to the Riesling area.
Obviously,
everybody likes candy German wine.
Don't we?
And then but most of the time it was just, you said buttery or like light and crisp in the summertime.
And then they're like, cool.
And they're just like, fantastic. We don't know, and we'll never know the difference. And then the other one was explaining to people that like Marilyn Manson's branded absinthe is not actually absinthe because it doesn't have wormwood in it.
Yeah, and it's also not legal in this country,
Exactly.
so you can't actually do that.
But many places, it's the Delta 8 of absinthe, where it's like it's not quite the same. That's that synthetic weed.
Oh, God, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
But so that was one gig, and so that was nights and weekends and weird shit.
When you say wine drunk ladies, though, like, how are you being hyperbolic, or you'd really like women would come in and they'd like, what they wanted?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's almost all of them knew what they wanted. You had regulars, you had that nice couple that were really, really sweet and were a lot of fun and made some conversations, and they are buying 2 cases of wine a week.
Woo! Come on.
And then you do the 5-cent sale, and nobody understood how the 5-cent sale worked.
How does it work?
Twice a year, there are 20 marked types of bottles of wine, and if you buy one, you get a second for a nickel, because it can't be free because the California redemption, element of the 5 cents.
I don't know this. Because the bottle has to be paid.
Exactly.
Oh, got it.
So
I didn't know why that's why they charged.
Yeah, and people would walk in and go like, so basically what they would do is they would walk in with walk up to the counter with like an $80 bottle of scotch, and have 2 of them and go like, one of these is free, right? Or they'd show up with one of the marked bottles of wine and an $80 bottle of scotch and go, I want the scotch to be free.
Cool. Doesn't everybody?
And then when you would explain to them that they don't understand the process, they would yell at you.
Of course.
I remember one kid, I carded him, and he made a whole scene and yelled, "This is bullshitty."
So he wasn't 21.
No, he certainly wasn't.
Yeah, he was like 13 and a half.
And it was one of those ones where I'm like, man, you misunderstand. I don't care. Like the funniest too is like, people misunderstand when you work there because you're working at a fancy liquor store. You work every holiday.
Oh,
and you
brutal.
give beer and sell beer and shit to people who are going to parties that you're not going to because you're here until 10. I closed New Year's 2010 and then opened New Year's Day 2010.
No, you didn't. You had to do a clopin?
I did a clopin for New Year's.
Ew.
Yeah, that was a dark chunk of time. But
I'll bet.
So Bevmo was wild. I had a manager who was an 80s comic.
No,
and so
that makes me sad.
Felt like this haunting vision of like, oh God, is this where I end
future?
up? And it was one of those ones where it was like a mixed bag, because like I look back and he definitely was a comic, because like there was definitely like that it's terrible to say, like that lack of boundaries, that sort of like throwing things at, and so like because I guess he used to work with Louis Anderson and stuff like that, like really old 80s comic, but like. So it was people like that, and so it was a perfectly fine. I hated it. I hated every second I was inside Bevmo.
Really?
And I'm far enough away now I can say this. The one trick I figured out is on Saturdays they had the wine tasting, and that's how I would get to go learn about the different wines. Is that I could go and just try all. They would do 6 wines every Saturday that you could have like a little cup of, and people would come in, show their ID, and do that. So when you were on your first break, you do it. Well, I figured out pretty quick into that run that if you just didn't eat breakfast before you went in for an opening gig, and then you went and
wine tasted,
ran back there and shotgunned all 6 wines,
you felt real toasty.
You could be a little fucking buzzed till lunch.
Yeah, you could.
And it was great. And so that was every. I mean, that's probably the most serious drinking I've ever. I mean, this whole time period is the most drinking I ever did. But like that particular drunk is like literally just every Saturday for a year. By 11 o'clock, I was a little drunk on Saturdays.
I mean, listen, to get through so many jobs, that is true for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Can't be falling down because you got to interact with humans.
You got to do something.
Yeah. Okay, so how long?
So that was about a year.
A
okay.
year.
And that's all of that. That's
okay.
all the Bevmo stuff. Lots of people. I'll get to school now, though, because that's the money thing for this.
Okay, but hold on. We are going to go to school, but I want to ask you one more question with Bevmo.
Yeah.
So was there ever a situation where, because I don't know, as a bartender in California, I know the laws for like over-serving or whatever. Is there an overselling policy of like if someone goes in to buy 6 cases?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so either.
And part of it is because it's harder, like in a bar, it's immediate
They're consuming.
consumption.
Yep, that's
Whereas
right.
for here, they could be buying for sustained for a time.
Yeah.
So like, and again, most of the time with shit like that, it's you're very rarely seeing somebody buy like 20 bottles of vodka. You never really have the Nicolas Cage leaving Las Vegas cart.
Ooh.
But you do see like I said, those nice couples where it's like, look, you guys are a lot of fun, but you're going through 24 bottles of wine a week.
That's too much wine.
That's too much wine. That's 12 apiece.
Ooh, unless you run in a bar.
On the other hand, Can you imagine how hard they party?
Oh my God, they must be so
Like,
much fun.
They must have the grossest hot tub.
Yeah. Oh God. And all of the STDs.
Yeah.
How many thruples they've been in? Okay, so sorry. So BevMo is right after college. You're also TAing at the time in South Central.
No, that's after.
That's after
the
BevMo.
end of this story.
Here we go.
This is all takes place in what I call my last year, and it's from spring 2009 to spring 2010, basically. And it's that summer trying to find the things, and then I start working at the BevMo, and BevMo was well and good, but the main job that kind of became my life was working at the school. And the school, I'll keep the name out of it because it's a fucking complicated place. It was a private school. I have a joke on my album, I'm a Person, where I describe it, where it is some private schools are very fancy places where you go for a high education, and some private schools are places where you send your kids to avoid Latinos. And that was the school that I worked at.
Wow.
It was a very like affluent, conservative people for the most part. And then occasionally like the real artsy weirdo where it's like, oh, you're like a money artist. And basically I sat down for the interview, and they said, so what we're looking for, we need somebody for lunch and after school duty to basically be like the one person liaison for our middle school class, because the school went from K to 8.
What does the liaison do? Like, what does that even mean?
Basically just be the person who like, they are my kids. Like I am the main adult besides their teachers who's going to be in charge or with these kids and stuff like that.
Okay.
And they're like, we like that you're tall. For those who don't know listening, I'm 6'6", so I'm a giant, goofy, big bird of a man. And so, they liked that I was tall, so I could be imposing, that I was a dude. And so they're like, it seems like they might listen to you. It's like, do you have thoughts on working with middle school kids? It's a specific kind of job.
Sure is.
And what's weird is like, I did a little bit of like teaching in college because I had taught like a graduation retention class. I was a part of this like program that had been helpful for me. So I'm a real big pay it forward guy, because it was like, I was in this program like, you got help with picking your classes if you did a bunch of community service. And then so I like had done that a bunch. And so I was like, oh, let me run a class just to see what's that's like, because I love trying things. And so at some point I was still in the phase where I'm just like, do I want kids? Do I like kids? I knew some people, I'd been around a little bit of it. It was weird to be responsible. I feel like the first time you're 20 and you're around a kid, you're like, oh shit, I'm the grown up. I don't get to be the fuck up now.
shit, help.
And so I'm like, sure, let's do this. And it's funny because then they give you the rundown once I took the job. I mean, you do all this training, you do background checks, you do all that kind of stuff. But then what was even funnier is they give me the talk of like, hey, first of all, you're going to have to, like, the kids are going to be, wild and stuff like that. You just got to take the authority. But they're like, also, look, man, there's going to be a lot of moms at this school, and many of them are going to try to fuck you.
Are you joking?
You got to not fuck these moms. And in my brain, I was just like, damn it.
Wait. They truly had to have
They didn't
don't
say
bang
don't
the
fuck
moms.
these moms. They put it a little more gracefully.
But it was the message was don't bang these people.
Yes.
What?
Was that
they were having this much of a problem?
Yes.
Get the fuck out of here.
I think it's more, I mean, I don't think they actually I don't think there was a ton of full tilt intercourse that would occur, but there is a lot of a lot of them are wealthy, lonely, often a little drunk housewives in BMWs who are looking for fun. And so they will shamelessly flirt or just it was an interesting part of the dynamic.
I mean, it's an ego boost, but wait, so this is in the middle of South Central. I think a lot
No, this is in Simi Valley.
Oh,
South Central.
Okay.
So here, I'll cut to the end so it all makes sense.
I'm so sorry. So no, don't cut to the end. So you get the lecture.
Okay, yeah, and I'm in Simi Valley. So both these jobs are in Simi where I'm living. I had gone from Long Beach in college, and I had to then move back in with my parents.
Okay, well, relatable.
Yeah, and so then I'm living at home, and I'm working these two jobs, and so it's maybe 24 kids or something like that in this class. It's very small, and it's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. There's like 8 8th graders, I think like 12 7th graders, and like, I don't know, 13 6th graders or whatever.
That math doesn't add up.
And the idea was to be authoritative. A lot of the people who worked at the school had like animal names because the school was also a summer camp in the summer.
Oh boy.
But I was Mr. Clark. They did, because I was with the older kids, I didn't have a name like that.
Tiger Boy.
I mean, there was, we had Zebra and Meadow and Flamingo.
See ya.
And so, yeah, I eventually got one. I'll get there. But
boy.
so I start working this school, and I have these kids, and it's I've never worked with kids before. I don't know what I'm doing, but I sort of go in and I'm like, okay, I'll just be an authority figure, and see what they're about.
Wait, how did you answer the question of like, hey, you can't bang these moms? Were you just like, cool, I won't?
I was like, tough but fair. And then in my head, I'm like, man, I will totally bang one of these moms. Never happened.
Bummer. Missed opportunity. But go ahead.
So, for the best, but also
bummer. Nuts. Okay, so you're like, I'll be an authority figure.
Yeah, and so I go in and I'm terrified. I don't know what any of this is, but I am a making short films on the weekends with people and doing this kind of stuff. And then also, like, I had a bunch of other friends who were living at home, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this without sounding crazy intense. One of the real running themes when I was in college with my friends back home, because I have a very tight group of friends from high school who very much stayed in touch and stuff like that. And we were all in the punk scene together, and we just did a lot of stuff. We were all in bands and wrote and stuff like that. And then right after high school, almost all of them got addicted to heroin.
Well, sure.
I had three friends go to prison in 1 week on heroin-related charges. Each one a different situation. That was a wild week.
Sounds like it.
Man, it was car crash, robbery, car crash and 2 robberies. It was wild.
How did you avoid getting sucked into that vortex?
I don't like downers. I don't drink. I never really liked pills. Like, if you can go fast or you can see weird stuff that's not there, I'm listening. But like, if you're going slow and laying down, I'm like, no, thank you. Okay. I would like to move fast or feel insane. Often relatable. Both. But like, and now I'm just like, I just want my back to not hurt and for people to be nice.
Also, somebody ice my knees.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I start working with these kids, and it's one of those things where it's like, people, even listening, there is, most people in life spend most of their effort trying to avoid middle schoolers. They are,
heinous,
the most feared humans on the planet.
Because they're mean.
It's like middle schoolers and then ISIS.
Yep.
And so I found pretty early on that my specialty, the thing I am best at in the world of education, is goddamn middle schoolers.
Really?
I get them in a way that I find that many adults do not.
Why?
I think in some ways I never stopped being a middle schooler.
Oh, fair enough.
I'm still very sad and feel frustrated and wish I was out of my parents' house. And so it was this weird thing of, I found across teaching, my secret tools were a twofold thing. One, being funny and like a little sarcastic to them, specifically to middle schoolers. I've worked with elementary school kids. I've worked with high school kids. The only place that the sarcasm stuff really works is middle school.
Okay.
And then figuring out they're in a weird place because they're half little kid, half grown up, and everything is confusing.
Yeah.
And everybody hates you.
That's right.
You forget until like once I was there and it was like, oh, literally every teacher in this school hates these kids because they're middle school kids. And I found very quickly, occasionally, when I treated somebody like a person, like a kid, all of a sudden I am the coolest person at this school because I, for a second, showed kindness or empathy.
Jesus.
And so for the most, like, they became my life. I was working so much that even, I was seeing friends and doing stuff, but like, these were the people I spent 90% of 2009, 2010 with, is these like 28 kids.
Oh, wow.
And they all have lives. They all have things they're going through, and I'm seeing them every day. I'm there as they're going through them. So it was this very odd relationship. And it's I've come to discover, like, that is part of the weirdness of teaching, is you have these brief periods of time where you have these incredibly intense relationships with these people who are going to disappear. It's the secret brutalist part of teaching, is you really fall in love with a group of people, and then they are just gone. And them being out of your life means you did your job.
Wow.
And so, like, when I had these kids, and I keep in touch with a few of them here and there and stuff like that, and, they've all largely, I mean, I was going to say they all turned, a couple of them are pieces of shit, but like some of the other ones were fine. But even that was neat. Like, one of the girls who was one of my favorites just because she was real pop culture savvy and she was a fucking sarcastic asshole right back. And I distinctly remember, like, her and this other girl were friends, and this other girl is like rich and pretty and the daughter of a cop, and this other one's like gonna go be a future artist. And it's weird watching this where, like, oh my god, I'm watching the last period of time where you guys are friends.
Really?
Because like, you're gonna go down real different paths. And that's a very much a kid thing that's fun to observe. Sure. I had another, like, being able to clock that. My favorite one of those I ever saw is the movie theater in our town is a pretty run-of-the-mill theater, but they started many years ago getting one theater that would do like whatever the art house movie of the time is. And they got Spring Breakers, which is a movie I love. And I went and saw it there because I was like, they're playing a fucking Harmony Korine movie in my hometown on a Friday night. Who is going to be there besides me? And I go in, and it's me and all high school senior girls who are seeing the Selena Gomez R-rated movie.
Oh, my God.
And then we proceed to watch Spring Breakers, a challenging art film at the best of times. And as we are walking out, I am watching 1,000 18-year-old girls be fucking furious that they just watched this piece of shit. What the fuck was that? It had no plot, just girls fucking shooting people in pink ski masks. And I'm watching one group, and it's like 4 girls, and 3 girls are berating the 4th girl because she said she liked the movie.
Jesus.
And what's funny is I'm like, oh my God, you're going to go to college in like a month, and you're never going to talk to any of these 3 people again.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to all of a sudden meet cool people and just be like, oh, I don't have to hang out with them. I don't have to pretend that I dig all those things.
Yeah.
Like, deuces. And so, seen a lot of that, but like, they just, they're little people, and they got hopes and dreams, and they care about stuff, and they get excited. And what was cool is like, they discover stuff, and they discover that I know stuff about stuff. Like I became the king of 7th grade boys when they learned I know shit about Star Wars and Assassin's Creed.
Oh my God.
Like once they knew that, and then the fact that like they liked it, but it had never occurred to them you could make fun of stuff you like.
Aww.
So I'd start busting on Star Wars, and they're literally like, oh my God, this guy's a fucking genius.
Wow.
Like, and so that was fun. I had like, there were like this one table was the nerd kids. It was like the one gay kid, and like the kid who drew pictures of Spanish galleons, and the girl who was writing a novel, and the kid who was real into Pokemon or whatever. And like, so they were some of my favorites because we just sit at the table and they knew stuff, or we could bullshit back and forth about anime and stuff like that. And I remember like one day calling them the nerd table, and they took offense. I was like, guys, I'm sitting at your table.
I am one of you.
And so that year was a wild run because it was just, I had gone from guy who was just a pretentious hipster with no money and fresh out of college, failed music career, comedy hasn't quite started yet, doesn't know who he is. And what happens to me, I get thrown into a world where my ego is just shattered. Wow. Because who doesn't think a 22-year-old is cool under any circumstances? Every 13-year-old on the planet. There's nothing you have to offer them. They're just like, oh, cool, you like Pavement? Fuck off.
And your feelings are constantly hurt by them.
But weirdest thing about all this time, I curse like a sailor. We've heard this on the thing. I can't swear there. So I have to start finding words to replace things. And the word I started using all the time was rad.
No way.
My kids made fun of me, so I became the rad guy. So literally, This Is Rad came from once I was there. Eventually, I signed up for Twitter while I was working there. So I changed, my Twitter name was Kyle Clark is Rad, just because I was like, it's a joke for me and the kids. Like, it's a fun thing marking that time. And then that just is now my brand in a big bad way of just like, it's so weird to be kind of associated with a word.
Yeah.
That on top of that is a thing that I literally just did because I couldn't say shit at work.
Sure.
Except for the time we were sitting after. So basically, middle school, I watched them while they were eating, and then let them out to play, and then like hung out and made sure nobody broke their face playing dodgeball and shit. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, because it's a private school, it's because many parents are workaholics who are never going to see their children. Mm-hmm. And so I had all the kids with crazy busy parents who, from after school to usually like 6 o'clock or so, would still be there. And so I'd help them with homework, but then also like, a lot of times you're just keeping them company, and stuff like that. And so became this fun mix of like, I'm helping with all this, but also like, again, even more so than the whole of the 8th grade, there's this group of about 12, 13 kids that I am with for like 4 hours every day in a room with after school, part of which they're trying to work, but also part of which they're just trying to like not be bored and do something and not get in trouble. And I was always kind of fascinated because like, and this has happened with a lot of jobs. It's why I kind of like going my own way. Is I find that like people tell me not to do a thing a certain way, and then I do it, and it super works. And then you look back at that person and go, see, like why did I wouldn't have done this if I had listened to you. Like, and you've done nothing. But and so one of the things that happened is like I do think of myself as a bit of an advocate for kids, and not in a like they shouldn't be kidnapped, but more in just the like kids are smart. Yeah, they definitely shouldn't. But like. Hard stance I'm taking. Don't kidnap children.
Facts.
But like they have personalities, they have likes, they have feelings and stuff
humans.
like that. And I liked knowing them and knowing those kinds of things. And eventually it became the thing too of like, they were pretty funny. And they really started to figure me out. And that's when we really got a perfect system, is when we could really game each other.
Sure.
Because they knew shit that I would just immediately shoot down. But they also knew that there were things, if they could figure out how to sell it. I was not a teacher and I was not a grown-up. So if the idea was funny or stupid, there was a good chance I'd say yes.
They had to pitch it, though.
Because no one's paying attention.
Sure.
And like, nothing if it was going to be dangerous or like fucked up. But like, you know, like one of the examples I always think of is like there were times where it was like too hot to go outside. So you just have to stay in. And so like I have tons of kids movies because I was a kid, you know, and also, you know, a fucking dork. And so like I would start bringing in movies sometimes. We'd watch those. And like I remember a distinct one is I brought in The Princess Bride. And we're watching The Princess Bride. But as we started, they yell, "Can we watch it in French?" And I go, "Yeah, but I'm going to put the English subtitles on, so if anybody wants to follow, they can do that." And they're like, "Tough but fair." And so I put it on. Well, about 30 minutes in, the teacher in the next room comes over. She's like, "Are you watching a French film?" And I was like, No, we're watching Princess Bride. We put French on." And she's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because who cares? Like,
because there are no rules."
But an adult, a real grown-up would be like, "No, that's frivolous and stupid." And I'm just like, "Dude, that's frivolous and stupid. Let's 100% do that."
Yeah.
Because it affects nothing.
No one.
Like, and now they have to live in the bit.
Ooh.
Like they have to continue to watch the movie in
they
French
can't be
with
like, "All right,
subtitles."
we
I'm
did
like,
it.
"All right, guys, but you're turning this movie into Jules and Jim, friend." And so like that was neat. And then eventually became so on Fridays they don't have homework. So now I really have to figure out bullshit to do with them. And again, it turned into like one time we made a movie and I turned them into a crew and gave them my camera and we shot a weekend at Clarky's where they kill me and then have to pretend that I'm still teaching them.
Wow.
And so just like fun shit like that. But like the highlight one was I had forgotten to think of an activity and was just like, oh God, what am I going to do? And then, so the school is a summer camp in the summer. And one of the rooms they have at the summer camp is a video game room that had like Guitar Hero and Mario Party and Dance Dance Revolution. Remember, wealthy children.
Hello.
And in the summertime, I was in charge of all that stuff because, again, know how to do tech. I'm the one guy who plays video games in the entire school, so I can set up a GameCube. And so I was like, wait a minute. I think I know where the keys are to the like summer activities closet. And it's where they like keep like the TVs, you know, on the reels and stuff like schools have. Yeah. And so I went and grabbed Guitar Hero, the TV, and a big bag of candy.
Oh my God, you were their favorite immediately.
And my kids are standing there in their 6th period class. They're about 20 minutes away from being set out.
And they're
standing in front of a class because they're like waiting to go back in because they'd walked to the library or some shit. And they yell as I'm coming around the corner, like, "What are we doing for Friday?" And then as I walk past, I'm just pushing a TV with Guitar Hero stuff and candy. And you just hear them go, "Yeah!" And then, like, we're playing it. And then, like, and again, I'm in, like fucking, man, this is great. And so eventually, but they're playing stuff, and they're playing stuff I don't want to listen to. So eventually I go, like, I have a crisp $5 American bill for the first person to bring me at least a 4-star on Raining Blood from Slayer. And then what was even funnier, so they're playing through and they're like, "This is really hard." But like one of the kids, who was a fairly sheltered young man, he was the one who liked to draw Spanish galleons. I fucking love that kid. He was a nerd and a half in the best kind of way, but just zero pop culture savvy in the slightest. But he starts hearing that dun, 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 like opening riff to Raining Blood, and you just see him go, "What is this?"
Aww.
And I was like, "That's Slayer, son. Things just change for you."
You're welcome.
And so, like, so much stuff like that. So I worked those 2 jobs for a year. There's a million. It's a bad sitcom. There's so many things I got sucked into. They would do a Alice in Wonderland day. I don't remember what the theme was, but I was the Mad Hatter for all those.
Isn't middle school a little old for that?
Probably. Well, remember it went kindergarten to 8th grade.
That's right.
So I also had a 3rd grade class that I ran their lunch too as a bonus. And those kids were cool as hell too, but like it was a different game than the others. Like,
sure.
And like occasionally I do kindergarten, and kindergarten's the funniest because me in a kindergarten playground is as if the fun showed up.
Oh.
Because like all they want is for me to chase them around and make monster noises.
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
And holy shit. Like literally, because at first they were like, "Oh, he's big and scary," but like once they figured out that I'm a fun machine, literally, because I didn't do kindergarten all the time. If I was watching my 3rd graders and they needed somebody to fill, there were 2 of us, so they would send me over. I think it was usually like I was who got sent when somebody had to pee. And so like I went over there. And eventually when I'd go in, like literally the teachers would laugh because you could tell when I got there to cover for somebody because the kids would just cheer.
Oh, cry.
Because I'm going to run around and do all this stuff. And because I love making a monster town and going, I'm going to eat you.
Yeah.
But then the other funny thing with those is that the biggest problem I would have when kindergartners were around is that they saw my arms as jungle vine ropes.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
what-
they would
yeah.
leap and early on it was, can you grab his hand and swing across with that before he notices that he's being accosted? And then that jumped to them grabbing my arm and then whipping their legs and trying to climb me 60s Batman style.
Ow. Big time ow.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, they weigh 40 pounds, and I'm a giant monster person, so it's mostly just like, please stop, please stop climbing me. So I did that all for a year, and then when we get to 2000, end of 2000, 10, or midway through the year, my mom has worked in education for most of my life. She worked for a Title I program, which is helping English as a second language students get caught up to go with that. And so, she's worked in it forever, and her best friend for many years was the president of the school board. So again, it's funny, I never thought about working in education despite most of my life being surrounded by like education stuff, not like academia, but like we're all wearing shirts that are Relay for Life or here's the track and field day kind of shit. And so then my mom and her friend sit me down one day and pitch like, hey, here's the thought. You're kind of stuck in a spot right now. You don't know what you're looking for, but like this thing's going on. There is still some money left from that education thing. It seems like nobody's going to use it. Why don't you go get a teaching credential? And then you can do any number of things. Then they're like, you can go be a sub. You can go do all these other things. Why don't you kind of take a look at that? They're like, worst case scenario, you're a professional teacher and you can buy a home.
Hello.
And I was like, ugh.
No, thank you.
And so I was like, sure. So I start looking around and I apply to a couple of things. And one of the ones I applied to is the UCLA Rossier School 13-month master's education program. And I throw it out there going like, sure, USC, this Cal State Long Beach educated boy is going to make it to like this place to do this stuff. And lo and behold, I get into the program.
Wow.
And so it is an 13-month program. No, 13-month program.
Yeah.
And so I started in May 2010 and start going. And you are basically, it's a whole litany of classes, and then you do 2 rounds of student teaching. And the first round is, you do a middle school and a high school, because I went to get my credential in secondary education English. And I ended up teaching at Jefferson High School in South Central for high school, and then Clinton Middle School also in South Central for middle school. And both were wild. Both were very different rides.
I'm going to pause you right there because, okay, so
how
folks.
long are we doing?
well, you're going to keep going. So, folks, that is where how long do you have?
I got infinite time.
Okay, great. Folks, we are going to pause there with part 1 because Kyle has a bunch of stories that
halfway through.
Yeah. He has a bunch of stories that we want to hear about the wild ride that was being a teacher in South Central. And so that is the end of part 1. Kyle, plug your socials real quick.
Oh, yes. I am at Kyle Clark is Rad on Twitter and Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram these days. I post I started doing artwork during COVID, and I post show stuff there. So
amazing. They'll find you there. All right. And then folks, tune in next week, same time, same bad place. And you'll get to hear part 2 with Mr. Kyle Clark of internet/teaching/comedy fame. You heard his intro in this episode. We will not do his intro again next week. Doesn't matter. I don't need to say this. I'm going to edit this out. And okay, folks, thank you so much for listening. That's going to do it for us here this week at Service from Hell. We'll catch y'all next week again with Mr. Kyle Clark. Thank you folks so much for listening. Good night.